Daniel Brooks stood in the shadows of his own home office, watching the security footage with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. On the screen, Lena, the woman his son called his second chance at smiling, was slipping out the back door again, her face tight with secrets. For 6 months, she'd been the answer to every prayer he'd refused to speak aloud. Now she was lying to him. And Daniel had been lied to before, by someone who'd sworn forever and left him holding a grieving child and a heart full of ashes. This time, he'd follow the truth wherever it led, even if it destroyed the only light his house had seen in 2 years. If you're watching from Seattle, Mumbai, Lagos, or anywhere in between, drop your city in the comments and hit that like button. Let's see how far this story about fear, trust, and second chances can travel. Now let me tell you how a single father's suspicion led him to a truth that would break him open and build him back entirely different. The house was too quiet again. Daniel Brooks noticed it the moment he stepped through the front door at 6:15 on a Thursday evening, his briefcase still heavy with contracts he hadn't finished reviewing. The silence wasn't empty. It was the loaded kind, the type that pressed against your eardrums and made you aware of your own breathing. He'd learned to read silence the way other men read stock reports, cataloging its textures and weights, understanding what each variety meant. This particular silence meant his son was upset. "Lena," Daniel called out, setting his briefcase on the marble console table in the foyer. His voice echoed in the 2-story entryway, bouncing off the chandelier his late wife had chosen during happier days. "Jamie." Footsteps on the stairs, light, quick, familiar. Lena Carter appeared on the landing, and Daniel felt that involuntary catch in his chest that had been happening more frequently over the past few months. She was 28, 9 years younger than him, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that managed to be both warm and guarded at the same time. She wore jeans and a soft blue sweater that his son had once declared made her look like a nice guy. "Mr. Brooks," she said, and there was that formality again, the careful distance she maintained even after 6 months of working in his home. "Jamie's in his room. He's having a difficult evening." Daniel was already moving toward the stairs. What happened? Nothing happened. Lena descended to meet him, and he caught the scent of her shampoo, something citrus and clean. "He had a good day at school. We did homework, had a snack. Then around 5:30, he just went quiet. You know how he gets." Daniel did know. His son carried grief like other 7-year-olds carried backpacks, as a constant weight that sometimes became too heavy to bear. There would be good days, even good weeks, and then something would trigger a memory, and Jamie would retreat into that hollow place where Daniel couldn't reach him. "I should go to him," Daniel said. He asked for space. Lena's hand touched his arm, brief and gentle. "Give him 10 minutes. He'll come down when he's ready." She was right. She was almost always right when it came to Jamie, but the urge to fix things, to make it better somehow, burned in Daniel's throat. He'd spent 2 years trying to be enough parent for a child who needed 2, and he still felt like he was failing most days. "How are you holding up?" Lena asked, and the question surprised him because people rarely asked Daniel Brooks how he was doing. They asked about his business, his portfolio, his plans for expansion. They asked if he needed anything for Jamie, but they didn't ask about the man himself. "I'm fine," he said automatically. Lena's expression suggested she didn't believe him, but she didn't push. That was another thing he'd learned about her. She knew when to press and when to let things breathe. "I need to head out a bit early tonight," she said, glancing at her watch. "I have an appointment at 6:45. Is that all right?" There it was again, the 3rd time this week she'd needed to leave early. The 5th time in 2 weeks if he was counting, and Daniel was definitely counting. He'd built a fortune in commercial real estate by paying attention to patterns, and Lena Carter had developed a pattern. "Another appointment?" He kept his voice neutral, but something flickered across her face. Anxiety, maybe guilt. "Yes, I'm sorry for the short notice. It won't affect Jamie's care. I've already prepared his dinner, and his reading homework is done. He just needs to practice his spelling words before bed." "What kind of appointment?" The question came out sharper than he'd intended. Lena's shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. "Personal business, Mr. Brooks. Nothing you need to worry about." That phrase, "nothing you need to worry about," landed wrong. Because Daniel had heard variations of it before, in his previous life. when his wife Sarah had been slowly pulling away from him. Just meeting a friend. Just running an errand. Nothing you need to worry about. Until the day she'd gotten into a car accident rushing back from wherever she'd actually been, and Daniel had learned that sometimes the things you didn't worry about were exactly the things that destroyed you. "I'm not worried," he lied. "Just curious." "It's personal." Lena's voice was kind but firm. "I promise I'll make up any time if needed. Jamie's my priority." She moved past him toward the kitchen, and Daniel stood in the foyer feeling the familiar weight of suspicion settling over his shoulders. He hated this feeling, hated that he'd become the kind of man who questioned people's motives, who looked for deception in every unexplained absence. Sarah's death had broken something in him, some fundamental ability to take people at face value. But it wasn't just Sarah, was it? There'd been the business partner who'd embezzled funds while swearing loyalty, the contractor who'd promised quality while cutting corners, the nanny before Lena who'd seemed perfect until Daniel had discovered her posting photos of Jamie on her personal social media for likes and follows, using his son's grief as content for strangers. Trust, Daniel had learned, was a luxury he couldn't afford, not when his child's well-being was at stake. He climbed the stairs to Jamie's room and knocked softly on the door painted with planets and stars. "Buddy, can I come in?" "Yeah." The voice was small. Daniel found his son sitting on the floor beside his bed, holding the framed photograph he kept on his nightstand. Sarah at the beach, laughing, her hair wild in the wind. Jamie had his mother's eyes, that same clear gray that could show every emotion. "Hey." Daniel sat down beside him, his back against the bed frame. "Rough day?" I forgot what her voice sounded like. Jamie stared at the photograph. "I was trying to remember and I couldn't. Is that bad?" The question hit Daniel square in the chest. "No, buddy, that's not bad. That's what happens with time. But I don't want to forget." Jamie's eyes welled up. "What if I forget everything?" Daniel pulled his son against his side, feeling the small body shake with tears that didn't quite fall. "You won't forget everything, I promise. And we have videos, remember? We can watch them whenever you want to hear her voice. It's not the same." "I know." They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that Daniel had learned was actually full of words that didn't need speaking. Eventually, Jamie's breathing evened out, and he pulled away, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Lena made mac and cheese," Jamie said. "The good kind with 3 cheeses. That was nice of her." "She's nice." Jamie looked up at his father with those 2 old eyes. "She doesn't try to replace Mom, she just is nice." Daniel's throat tightened. "Yeah, she is." "Dad?" Jamie hesitated. "Are you going to marry Lena?" The question came out of nowhere and hit like a truck. "What? No, why would you ask that?" Jamie shrugged, suddenly fascinated with the carpet. "Tommy at school said when his mom died, his dad married the nanny. And Lena lives here, kind of." "She doesn't live here. She works here. There's a difference." "But she makes you smile sometimes. I've seen it." Daniel didn't know what to do with that observation, so he deflected. "Come on, let's go have some of that famous mac and cheese before Lena has to leave." They made their way downstairs to find Lena in the kitchen, plating the pasta with a side of steamed broccoli that Jamie would definitely complain about. She'd already set the table with placemats and napkins, the way she always did, turning ordinary meals into small moments of care. "There's my guy," she said when Jamie appeared. "Feeling better?" Jamie nodded and climbed into his chair. Daniel noticed the way Lena's hand briefly touched the top of his son's head, a gesture so natural and unconscious it made his chest ache. "I made extra," Lena said to Daniel, "in case you haven't eaten." "I'm fine, thank you." "You say that a lot." She met his eyes across the kitchen island. "The I'm fine thing, but you always look tired." Before Daniel could respond, Jamie spoke up. "Dad works too much. That's what Grandma says." "Grandma needs to mind her business," Daniel said lightly, but he saw Lena smile. She glanced at her watch again. It was 6:35. "I really need to go." "Jamie, spelling words before bed, okay? And brush your teeth for 2 full minutes, not the 30-second version you think I don't notice." Jamie grinned around a mouthful of pasta. "Okay." Lena grabbed her bag from the counter, a worn canvas thing that had seen better days, and headed for the door. Daniel followed her, that gnawing feeling in his gut growing stronger. "Lena." He caught up to her in the foyer. "These appointments. Is everything all right? If you're having some kind of trouble—" She turned to face him, and for just a second, he saw something raw in her expression. Exhaustion, maybe stress, definitely something that looked like pain. But then it was gone, replaced by that professional warmth. "Everything's fine, Mr. Brooks. I promise. I'll see you tomorrow at 8. And then she was gone, the door closing softly behind her. Daniel stood there for a long moment, listening to her car start in the driveway, watching through the sidelight window as her taillights disappeared down the tree-lined street. Behind him, he could hear Jamie humming while he ate, a sound that had been absent from this house for so long before Lena arrived. 6 months ago, Daniel had been drowning. Jamie had been drowning. The house had felt like a mausoleum, and every nanny Daniel hired lasted less than a month before they couldn't handle a grieving child's mood swings and a widower's emotional unavailability. Then Lena had walked in for the interview with no fancy credentials, no child psychology degree, just a quiet confidence and references from families who called her a miracle worker. She'd sat with Jamie that first day while he'd had a complete meltdown about his shoes. Sarah had always tied his shoes, and he couldn't bear having someone else do it, and Lena had simply waited it out. No platitudes, no forced cheer, just patient presence. "Sometimes," she'd told Jamie softly, "the hard feelings need to be big for a while before they can get small again. That's okay. I'll wait." She'd been with them every day since, and slowly, impossibly, light had started creeping back into the corners of their lives. Jamie smiled again. He told jokes. He talked about his mom without falling apart every time. He started sleeping through the night. Lena had given them back something Daniel thought was lost forever, the possibility of being okay. And now she was lying to him, or at the very least, hiding something. Daniel walked back to the kitchen where Jamie was finishing his dinner. His son had mac and cheese on his cheek and was carefully separating the broccoli into a pile he clearly hoped to abandon. "Nice try with the vegetables," Daniel said, sitting down across from him. "They're green. Green food is suspicious. Your mother used to say the same thing." Daniel felt the familiar pang, but pushed through it. "Eat half. Deal?" "Deal." While Jamie reluctantly chewed broccoli, Daniel pulled out his phone and opened the app connected to their home security system. He'd installed cameras after the social media incident with the previous nanny. Not to spy, he told himself, just to ensure Jamie's safety. The cameras covered the main rooms, the backyard, and the driveway. He pulled up the footage from the past week and started reviewing Lena's departures. Monday, left at 6:40, driving east toward downtown. Tuesday, no early departure. Wednesday, left at 6:35, same direction. Thursday, currently leaving at 6:40, same route. Daniel's jaw tightened. Whatever these appointments were, they were consistent, scheduled, and Lena was going to significant lengths to avoid discussing them. "Dad?" Jamie's voice pulled him back. "You're doing the worry face." "What worry face?" "The one where your eyebrows do the thing," Jamie demonstrated, scrunching his forehead. Daniel forced his expression to relax. "Sorry, just thinking about work." "You think about work too much. Lena says your brain needs rest too, not just your body." "Lena says a lot of things, apparently." "She's smart." Jamie pushed his empty plate away. "Can I play video games before spelling words?" "Spelling words first, then 30 minutes of games." Jamie groaned but headed toward the living room where they kept his educational workbooks. Daniel remained at the table, staring at his phone screen, at the frozen image of Lena's car pulling out of the driveway. He thought about the way she'd looked when he'd asked about the appointments, that flash of something in her eyes that could have been fear or guilt or simply exhaustion. He thought about how she'd avoided direct answers, how she'd put up walls while still being kind. He thought about Sarah and the walls she'd built, and how he'd told himself everything was fine right up until it wasn't. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Taking Jamie this weekend? I'd love to see my grandson." Daniel typed back, "He'd like that. I'll drop him off Saturday morning." Another message appeared. How are you doing? Really? The same question Lena had asked. Daniel didn't answer it any more honestly this time. Fine. Busy with work. Daniel, you can't work forever. Jamie needs you present, not just paying bills. He set the phone down without responding because his mother was right and he didn't want to admit it. Work was easier than feeling. Contracts and negotiations had clear outcomes, definitive wins and losses. Grief was messier, parenting was messier, and whatever was happening with Lena was messier still. Dad, Jamie called from the living room. How do you spell necessary? Sound it out first. N-E-C-E. S-S-A-R-Y. Close. One S, two S. Necessary. Daniel could hear Jamie writing, the scratch of pencil on paper. Normal sounds, safe sounds. The sounds of a child doing homework on a Thursday evening. The kind of ordinary moment that Daniel had once taken for granted and now treasured like gold. He couldn't risk losing this. Whatever stability they'd built, whatever progress Jamie had made, it was too fragile, too precious. If Lena was in some kind of trouble, if there was something in her life that could shatter this careful peace, Daniel needed to know. He looked at his phone again, at the security footage, at the timestamp showing 6:43 p.m. Lena would be arriving at her mysterious appointment right about now, and Daniel Brooks, successful businessman and protective father, made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, he would follow her. Down. The next day dragged like pulled taffy. Daniel tried to focus on a conference call about a mixed-use development in the financial district, but his mind kept wandering to the clock. Lena would be at the house with Jamie. They'd be doing the usual routine, after-school snack, homework, maybe a walk to the park if the weather held. And at 6:30 or 6:40, she'd leave for her appointment, and Daniel would be ready. He'd arranged to work from home, something he rarely did anymore. The house felt different during the day when he was there. Less like a museum, more like a space that people actually inhabited. He could hear Lena and Jamie in the kitchen around 4, their voices carrying up to his office. Can we make cookies? Jamie was asking. We don't have chocolate chips. We could use raisins. Raisins are nature's chocolate chips. Lena laughed, a sound that seemed to make the whole house brighter. Absolutely nobody has ever said that. But okay, we can make oatmeal raisin cookies. Your dad won't mind? Dad loves cookies. He just pretends he doesn't because adults are weird about sugar. Fair point. Daniel found himself smiling despite the knot of anxiety in his stomach. He saved his work and headed downstairs, following the smell of butter and cinnamon. Jamie was standing on a step stool at the counter, carefully measuring flour into a bowl while Lena supervised. His son had flour on his nose and concentration on his face. Smells good in here, Daniel said from the doorway. Both of them turned. Jamie's face lit up. Dad, we're making cookies, the raisin kind, because Lena says chocolate chips are for quitters. I did not say that. Lena was fighting a smile. I said we're being creative with available resources. You're home early, Jamie observed. Are you sick? Can a father just want to spend time with his son? You never come home early. Jamie stated it as simple fact, without judgment, which somehow made it worse. Daniel felt Lena's eyes on him, assessing. Slow day at the office, he said, which was a lie. He had 17 emails waiting for responses and a contract negotiation that needed his attention. But those things could wait. You want to help? Lena offered. We're at the mixing stage. And somehow Daniel found himself standing at the counter with an apron tied around his waist, stirring cookie dough while Jamie added raisins one at a time and counted them aloud. Lena moved around the kitchen with easy efficiency, cleaning as they went, making the whole process look effortless. My mom used to make cookies, Jamie said suddenly. Chocolate chip ones. She'd let me eat the dough even though you're not supposed to. The kitchen went still. These moments still happened. Unexpected mentions of Sarah that could either derail the entire day or pass by like clouds. That was one of her rebellions, Daniel said carefully. Cookie dough and staying up past bedtime. And singing in the car too loud, Jamie added. Definitely that. Lena didn't say anything, just kept wiping down the counter, giving them space to remember. Your cookies are going to be great too, Jamie told her. Different, but great. Thanks, buddy. Lena's voice was soft. That means a lot. They finished mixing the dough and scooped it onto baking sheets. While the first batch baked, Jamie entertained them with a detailed explanation of the social dynamics of second grade, which apparently involved a complex trading economy based on Pokemon cards and fruit snacks. Daniel watched Lena as she listened to his son, the way she asked follow-up questions and seemed genuinely interested in 7-year-old politics. She was good at this. Not just the nanny tasks, but the human parts. The showing up, the paying attention, the making someone feel heard. At 6:15, Lena started gathering her things. Leaving early again? Daniel tried to keep his tone casual. Yes. Same appointment as yesterday. I'm sorry. You apologize a lot for these appointments. He watched her face carefully. Must be important. Something flickered across her expression, that same guarded look. They are. To me. Lena, if you need help. I don't need help, Mr. Brooks. I need understanding. She met his eyes directly. I'm handling my personal business, and it's not affecting my work with Jamie. That's all you need to know. The words were polite but firm, and they stung more than they should have. Because she was right. Technically, she wasn't obligated to share her personal life with him. But it didn't feel right, these secrets between them, not when she spent so much time in their home, in their lives. Okay, Daniel said. I'll see you Monday then. Lena nodded, told Jamie to be good over the weekend, and headed out. Daniel waited until he heard her car start before he grabbed his own keys. Stay inside, buddy. Lock the door. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Where are you going? Forgot something at the office. You'll be okay? Jamie looked uncertain, but nodded. Daniel hated leaving him, but he'd set up the security system so he could monitor the house from his phone. Jamie would be fine for a short time. Daniel got into his car, a black BMW that blended into traffic easily, and pulled out of the driveway. Lena's white Honda was 3 cars ahead at the stop sign. He followed at a careful distance, keeping other vehicles between them. She headed east, just like the security footage had shown. Through the upscale neighborhood where Daniel lived, past the shopping district with its boutiques and cafes, into older parts of town where the buildings got shorter and the paint got more faded. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. What was she doing in this part of town? Lena turned onto a street lined with warehouses and auto repair shops. Daniel followed, his heart rate picking up. This didn't look like any kind of appointment location. This looked like... She pulled into the parking lot of what appeared to be an abandoned community center. The building was brick, 2 stories, with windows that were either boarded up or covered with heavy curtains. A hand-painted sign over the door read, Safe Harbor, in faded letters. Daniel parked across the street behind a panel van and watched as Lena got out of her car. She looked tired, more tired than she ever seemed at his house. She pulled a bag from her trunk, something heavy that made her adjust her grip, and headed for the door. Before she could knock, it opened. A woman appeared, older, maybe 60, with gray hair and a bun. She smiled at Lena, said something Daniel couldn't hear, and ushered her inside. Daniel sat in his car, staring at the building, Safe Harbor. What the hell was Safe Harbor? He pulled out his phone and searched the name along with the address. The results were sparse. A Facebook page that hadn't been updated in 6 months, a few mentions in local news articles about community outreach, and a listing on a nonprofit directory that described it as a community center providing support services for at-risk youth and families. At-risk youth. Daniel's stomach dropped. Was Lena in some kind of trouble? Was she involved in something illegal? He was being ridiculous. Lena Carter, the woman who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character and cut sandwiches into dinosaur shapes, wasn't involved in anything illegal. But then why the secrecy? Why the careful avoidance of his questions? Daniel made another decision. He got out of his car and crossed the street. The building looked even more run down up close. The brick was crumbling in places, and the steps leading to the door were cracked. He could hear voices inside, multiple people, including children. He tried the door. It was unlocked. The interior was nothing like the exterior suggested. The entryway was clean, painted in warm yellows and oranges. Children's artwork covered one wall, handprints turned into flowers, crayon drawings of families painted rainbows. There was a check-in desk that currently stood empty, and beyond it, an open space that looked like it served as a combination cafeteria and activity room. That's where the voices were coming from. Daniel moved quietly toward the archway, staying in the shadows. What he saw stopped him cold. Lena was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by 6 or 7 children ranging from maybe 5 to 10 years old. They were all focused on her as she helped a small girl with dark braids sound out words in a picture book. "Beautiful job, Maya," Lena was saying. "See? You knew that word. You just needed to trust yourself." The little girl beamed. Around the room, Daniel noticed other adults, volunteers maybe, working with other children. One teenage boy sat alone at a table, doing homework with intense concentration. A younger child was building something with blocks in the corner while a volunteer watched. "All right, everyone," Lena announced. "Let's put our books away and get ready for snack time. Remember to wash your hands." The children scrambled up, and that's when Daniel noticed something else. These weren't typical kids at an after-school program. One boy had a healing bruise on his cheek. A girl wore clothes that were clean but clearly too big, probably donations. Several of them had that particular wariness in their eyes that spoke of difficult lives. These were kids who'd been hurt, kids who had nowhere else to go. And Lena was here with them every evening. Daniel backed away from the archway before anyone could spot him. He made it outside, back to his car, his mind reeling. This was her secret appointment. This was why she left early, why she was evasive about where she went. She was volunteering at a shelter for at-risk children. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt shame burning hot in his chest. He'd followed her. He'd suspected her of what? Deception? Betrayal? When all along she'd been doing this. Daniel drove home in a daze. Jamie was exactly where he'd left him, watching a nature documentary about penguins. "You were gone longer than 20 minutes, Jamie observed. "I know. Sorry, buddy." "Did you find what you forgot?" Daniel thought about Lena on that floor, helping a traumatized child learn to read. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I did." That night, after Jamie was asleep, Daniel sat in his office and did more research on Safe Harbor. The picture that emerged was both heartbreaking and inspiring. The center had been operating for 12 years, providing services to children in the foster system, homeless youth, and kids from abusive homes. They offered after-school programs, tutoring, counseling referrals, and a safe space for children who had nowhere else to go. They were also, according to their tax documents, perpetually underfunded and running on volunteers. Daniel thought about Lena's worn bag, her old car, the way she sometimes brought her lunch in Tupperware instead of buying food. She wasn't just volunteering her time, she was supporting this place financially too, on a nanny's salary. The shame intensified, mixing with something else, admiration maybe, or recognition of something he'd lost sight of in the past 2 years. The idea that some people still believed in helping others, even when it cost them something. Daniel opened a new browser tab and pulled up Safe Harbor's donation page. The website was crude, clearly built by someone with more heart than technical skill. But there was an address for sending checks. He could help, anonymously. It would be easy. Just write a check, send it in without a return address, ensure that Lena's work there had the resources it needed. But something stopped him. Because sending money felt like the easy way out, the way to absolve himself of the guilt without actually confronting what he'd done, without admitting that he'd let fear make him suspicious of someone who deserved better. He'd followed her like she was a criminal instead of asking her directly, like an adult, why she needed to leave early. He'd assumed the worst because that's what Daniel Brooks did now. He assumed the worst and protected himself accordingly. Except Lena wasn't Sarah. She wasn't the business partner who'd stolen from him, or the contractor who'd cut corners, or the nanny who'd exploited Jamie's pain for social media clout. She was someone trying to make a difference in the world, and Daniel had treated her like a threat. He needed to talk to her, not on Monday when she came back to work, but now. He needed to tell her he knew, that he was sorry, that he understood why she'd kept it private. Daniel grabbed his phone and pulled up her number. His thumb hovered over the call button. What would he even say? "Hey, I followed you to your volunteer job because I'm a paranoid widower who can't trust anyone anymore." He set the phone down. Monday. He'd talk to her on Monday. He'd apologize, offer to support the center, make it right somehow. But Monday felt very far away, and the weight in Daniel's chest, part shame, part something else he couldn't quite name, felt impossibly heavy. In his son's room, Jamie slept peacefully, his breathing even and calm. The photo of Sarah still sat on the nightstand, her smile frozen in that moment of perfect happiness. "I'm trying," Daniel whispered to the photograph. "I'm trying to do better." But he wasn't sure if he was talking to his late wife or to himself. The weekend passed in a fog of guilt and second-guessing. Daniel took Jamie to his mother's house on Saturday morning as planned, enduring her pointed questions about why he looked so tired and whether he was taking care of himself. He deflected with practiced ease, the same way he deflected most uncomfortable conversations these days. Sunday evening, when he picked Jamie up, his mother caught his arm at the door. "Whatever's eating at you, Daniel, don't let it fester," she said quietly, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. "I watched your father do that for years. It doesn't get better by itself." He'd nodded and promised he was fine, another lie to add to the growing collection. Now it was Monday morning, and Daniel was sitting in his home office pretending to review a property acquisition proposal while actually listening for the sound of Lena's car in the driveway. Jamie was already dressed for school, eating cereal at the kitchen counter and explaining the plot of the Penguin documentary to anyone who would listen. At 7:55, Lena's Honda pulled up. Daniel's hands went clammy. He heard the front door open, heard Lena's cheerful greeting to Jamie, heard his son's excited response about the cookies they'd made and how Grandma had declared them surprisingly edible for raisin-based desserts. Daniel forced himself to wait 10 minutes before heading downstairs. When he entered the kitchen, Lena was packing Jamie's lunch while his son searched for his library book. "Morning, Mr. Brooks," Lena said, glancing up. Her smile was professional, warm, completely unaware that Daniel had spent the weekend drowning in shame. "Morning, Lena, do you have a minute before you take Jamie to school?" Something flickered in her expression, wariness maybe. "Of course." "Jamie, go brush your teeth again. You missed the back molars." "I did not." "You always miss the back molars. Go." Jamie grumbled but headed upstairs. Daniel waited until he heard the bathroom door close before turning to Lena. "I need to apologize to you." Lena set down the sandwich she'd been wrapping. "For what?" "Friday night. I followed you to Safe Harbor." The color drained from her face. For a long moment, she just stared at him, and Daniel watched a dozen emotions cross her features: shock, anger, hurt, betrayal. "You followed me." Her voice was flat, carefully controlled. "I know how that sounds. You followed me to my personal appointment, the one I specifically told you was private. I was worried. You were being secretive, leaving early multiple times a week, and I have a child to protect." "From me?" The words came out sharp. "You thought you needed to protect Jamie from me?" "I didn't know what to think. I've been burned before, Lena. I've trusted people who didn't deserve it, and I couldn't take that risk with my son." "So you stalked me instead of having an adult conversation." Lena grabbed her bag from the counter. "That's quite an approach to trust issues, Mr. Brooks." "I'm trying to apologize." "Are you?" "Because it sounds more like you're trying to justify violating my privacy." Her hands were shaking. "I work in your home. I care for your child. I show up every single day and give everything I have to this job, and you followed me like I was some kind of criminal." "I know, you're right. It was wrong, and I'm sorry." "Why?" She turned to face him fully. "Why did you follow me? What did you think you were going to find?" Daniel struggled to put his fears into words. I don't know what I thought. Something that would hurt Jamie, something that would take you away from us." "And instead you found what? Children who need help? Is that so terrible?" "No, it's incredible. What you do there, the time you give, the time I give is mine, Mr. Brooks. My hours outside this job belong to me. I don't owe you an explanation for how I spend them." "You're right. You don't." Lena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I specifically didn't tell you about Safe Harbor because I knew you'd do exactly this. Try to fix it, throw money at it, turn it into some charity project. Those kids aren't a project. They're real people with real trauma, and they deserve privacy and dignity, not some rich guy's guilt money." The words hit like physical blows. "I wasn't trying to." "Yes, you were. You're already thinking about it, aren't you? how much you can donate, what resources you can provide. Because that's what people like you do. You write checks instead of showing up. You fix problems from a distance instead of getting your hands dirty. That's not fair, isn't it? Lena swiped at her eyes. I've been working with those kids for 3 years. 3 years of showing up every night I can, of sitting with them through nightmares and panic attacks, of helping them learn to trust adults again after adults failed them. And you followed me there after 6 months of working for you because you couldn't trust me enough to just ask. Jamie's footsteps sounded on the stairs. Both adults fell silent, rearranging their faces into something approximating normal. Ready, Jamie announced, backpack bouncing. Great, let's go. Lena's voice was bright and false. She looked at Daniel. We'll finish this conversation later. She ushered Jamie out the door before Daniel could respond. He watched through the window as she buckled his son into the car, saw the way she forced a smile for Jamie's sake, saw his son chattering away, completely unaware of the tension. The car pulled out of the driveway, and Daniel was left standing in his kitchen feeling like he'd just destroyed something precious without fully understanding how. He couldn't focus on work. The property acquisition sat untouched on his desk while he paced his office, replaying the conversation. Lena's words echoed in his head. You write checks instead of showing up. Was that what he did? Was that who he'd become? He thought about the past 2 years, about how he'd handled Sarah's death. He'd thrown himself into work, hired the best therapist money could buy for Jamie, arranged play dates with the children of other wealthy families, enrolled his son in expensive programs designed to help grieving children. He'd written checks and made arrangements and organized everything from a careful distance. He'd managed his grief like a business problem, something that could be solved with enough resources and proper delegation. And it had worked, sort of. Jamie was doing better, the house functioned, life moved forward. But Daniel himself? He hadn't actually dealt with any of it. He'd just managed. His phone rang. His mother. Did you talk to her? She asked without preamble. How did you? You had that look on your face yesterday. The one you get when you've done something you regret but haven't fixed yet. Did you apologize? I tried. It didn't go well. Good. Daniel blinked. Good? You need someone in your life who doesn't let you off easy. That girl, Lena, she's the best thing that's happened to you and Jamie in 2 years. Don't lose her because you're too proud or too scared to actually be vulnerable. I'm not. You are. You've been hiding behind work and routine and that house that's too big for 2 people. You need to actually feel things, Daniel. You need to let people in. After they hung up, Daniel sat with those words. Let people in. When was the last time he'd actually done that? When had he last had a real conversation with someone? The kind where you admitted you were struggling or scared or confused. Sarah had been the last person he'd been truly vulnerable with. And then she died, and the walls had gone up, and Daniel had convinced himself it was safer this way. Except it wasn't safer. It was just lonelier. The morning crawled by. At 11:30, Lena returned from dropping Jamie at school. Daniel heard her come in through the front door, heard her footsteps in the kitchen. He found her unloading the dishwasher, her movements sharp and efficient. Lena. She didn't look up. I have work to do, Mr. Brooks. Please, can we talk about this? I don't think there's anything left to say. You don't trust me. That's been made abundantly clear. It's not about you, it's about me and my own issues. Don't. She finally met his eyes. Don't make this about your trauma. Yes, you lost your wife. Yes, that was horrible. But it doesn't give you the right to treat everyone in your life like they're going to betray you. Daniel leaned against the counter. You're right. It doesn't. So why do you? The question was simple but devastating. Why did he? Why had he let fear become his default setting? Because it's easier, he said finally. Being suspicious, keeping distance, assuming the worst, it's easier than hoping someone will stay and being wrong about it. Lena's expression softened slightly. That's a terrible way to live. I know. She finished putting away the dishes and closed the dishwasher with more force than necessary. I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen. Can you do that? Daniel nodded. Lena took a breath. I didn't tell you about Safe Harbor because it's mine. It's the one part of my life that has nothing to do with being someone's employee or caretaker or helper. When I'm there, I'm not Lena the nanny. I'm just Lena, working with kids who need someone to show up for them. I understand. I'm not finished. Her voice was firm. I also didn't tell you because I knew you'd want to help, and I didn't want your help. Those kids have been treated like charity cases their whole lives. They've been studied and assessed and pitied. What they need is consistency and presence, not another wealthy donor who'll write a check and disappear. Is that what you think I'd do? Isn't it? When's the last time you got personally involved in anything? When's the last time you did something that actually cost you more than money? The question stung because she was right. Daniel had become an expert at solving problems from a distance, at using his wealth as a buffer between himself and actual emotional engagement. I want to do better, he said quietly. I want to be better. I just don't know how anymore. Lena studied him for a long moment. Why did you really hire me, Mr. Brooks? The question caught him off guard. Because Jamie needed someone. The other nannies couldn't handle him. That's not all of it. Daniel thought back to that interview 6 months ago, to sitting across from Lena in his living room while Jamie screamed upstairs about something inconsequential. He remembered how every other candidate had looked uncomfortable or impatient, how they'd all had suggestions for managing his behavior or establishing boundaries. Lena had just sat there, calm and steady, and said, "He's allowed to be angry." His world fell apart. Anger makes sense. I hired you, Daniel said slowly, because you were the first person who didn't treat Jamie's grief like a problem that needed solving. You treated it like something that just was. And now you're treating my privacy like a problem that needs solving. The parallel was sharp and accurate. I'm sorry, truly. I violated your trust, and there's no excuse for that. No, there isn't. They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them heavy with things unsaid. I'm going to keep working here, Lena said finally, because Jamie needs consistency, and I care about him. But things need to change between us. Okay, what do you need? Respect. Actual respect. Not the performative kind where you say the right things, but still treat me like someone who needs monitoring. My personal life is my personal life. If I need help, I'll ask for it. Understood. And if you ever follow me again, I quit. I don't care how much Jamie needs me. I won't work for someone who stalks me. Fair. That won't happen again. Lena grabbed a cleaning cloth from under the sink. I need to clean the upstairs bathrooms. We can be professional and polite, Mr. Brooks, but don't expect us to go back to how things were. You broke something, and it's going to take time to repair. She left the kitchen before he could respond. Daniel heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard the bathroom door close. He'd handled this all wrong. From the moment he'd felt that first flicker of suspicion, he'd made every possible wrong choice. He'd let his fear drive him instead of his values, let his past dictate his present, let his walls stay up when he should have been tearing them down. The day continued in uncomfortable silence. Lena stayed upstairs working, and Daniel retreated to his office to actually attempt some work, but his mind kept wandering back to her words. When's the last time you did something that actually cost you more than money? At 3:15, Lena left to pick up Jamie from school. She didn't say goodbye. Daniel pulled up Safe Harbor's website again and stared at the donation page. He could send money. It would help. The center clearly needed it, but Lena was right. It would be the easy way out, the distant way, the way that let him feel like he was helping without actually showing up. When Lena returned with Jamie, his son was full of stories about music class and a game they'd played at recess. He didn't notice the tension between the adults, too caught up in his own 7-year-old world. Can Lena stay for dinner? Jamie asked. We're making tacos and she does the best taco faces with the toppings. I can't tonight, buddy, Lena said gently. I have somewhere I need to be. Safe Harbor? The question came from Daniel. Lena's jaw tightened. Yes. Can I come with you? The request clearly surprised her. What? Not to fix anything or donate anything or take over, just to see what you do there, to understand. No? Lena, I said no. This is exactly what I was talking about. You don't get to follow me there and then invite yourself to my volunteer work. Those kids don't need some stranger showing up out of curiosity. What if I actually wanted to help? Not with money, with time. Lena laughed, but there was no humor in it. You? Volunteering? When was the last time you did anything that didn't have a clear return on investment? That's not fair. Isn't it? You work 60-hour weeks. You barely spend time with your own son. And now you want to volunteer with traumatized children? For what? To prove something to me? To assuage your guilt? Jamie was watching them now, confusion on his face. Are you guys fighting? Both adults immediately shifted their demeanor. No, buddy, Lena said. Just having a grown-up discussion. Why don't you go wash your hands for snack? After Jamie left, Lena turned back to Daniel. Don't use those kids to work out your issues. They deserve better than that. You're right. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate to suggest. Yes, it was. She checked her watch. I need to go. Jamie's snack is cut fruit in the fridge. He has spelling homework and a permission slip that needs signing for the field trip next week. She was gone within minutes, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts and his son's cheerful chatter about the upcoming trip to the Science Museum. That evening, after Jamie was in bed, Daniel did something he hadn't done in months. He called his therapist. Dr. Morrison answered on the second ring. Daniel, it's been a while. I know, I've been managing. And how's that working out? Daniel let out a long breath. Not great. Can we schedule a session tomorrow if you have anything available? I can do 4:30 tomorrow. What's going on? I think I've been living wrong, and I don't know how to fix it. The next afternoon, Daniel found himself in Dr. Morrison's familiar office, sitting in the chair he'd occupied religiously for the first year after Sarah's death, before deciding he was fine and didn't need therapy anymore. Talk to me about Lena, Dr. Morrison said after Daniel had outlined the situation. What about her? You followed her. That's not a small thing. What were you afraid you'd find? Daniel considered the question. I don't know. Evidence that she couldn't be trusted. Something that would justify pulling back, keeping distance. Why would you want justification for that? Because it's safer. Safer than what? Than caring. Than letting her matter. Dr. Morrison made a note. Does she matter? The question should have been simple, but it lodged in Daniel's chest like something sharp. She matters to Jamie. I asked if she matters to you. Daniel looked at his hands. Yes, she matters. She's the first person in 2 years who's made this house feel like something other than a mausoleum. She's patient with Jamie when I want to scream. She remembers little things, like how he likes his sandwiches cut or that he can't fall asleep if his closet door is open. She talks to me like I'm a person, not just Jamie's father or a paycheck. And that terrifies you. Yes, because Sarah mattered and then she was gone. Daniel felt his throat tighten. I can't do that again. I can't let someone become essential and then lose them. So you tried to push Lena away by proving she wasn't trustworthy. I didn't. Daniel stopped. Yeah, I guess I did. And instead you found out she's even more admirable than you thought, which makes her matter more, not less. I don't know what to do with that. Dr. Morrison leaned forward. Daniel, you've spent 2 years trying to make yourself invulnerable. You've built walls and routines and maintained careful distance from anyone who might hurt you. But that's not living. That's just surviving. Surviving feels safer. Does it? Or does it just feel lonelier? Daniel thought about his big house with its carefully maintained spaces, about the life he'd built that was efficient and organized and completely empty of real connection. Lonelier, he admitted. You have a choice to make, Dr. Morrison said. You can keep those walls up and stay safe and alone, or you can start taking them down piece by piece and risk actually living again. What if I tear down the walls and everything falls apart anyway? What if you don't, and you spend the rest of your life wondering what you missed? That evening, Daniel picked up Jamie from Lena as usual. She was polite, professional, distant. She'd prepared dinner, laid out Jamie's pajamas, organized his backpack for the next day. Everything perfect, everything impersonal. Lena, Daniel said as she headed for the door. She turned, her expression guarded. I talked to my therapist today about what happened, about why I followed you. Okay, He helped me understand that I've been trying to protect myself from loss by not letting anyone matter. And when you started mattering despite my best efforts to keep distance, I panicked. Lena's expression softened slightly. Mr. Brooks, I'm not trying to make excuses. I just wanted you to know that I'm working on it, on being better, on actually dealing with my issues instead of managing them. That's good. I hope it helps you. I also wanted to tell you that you were right. About everything, about me writing checks instead of showing up, about me keeping distance, about me treating everyone like they're going to betray me. You were absolutely right. I wasn't trying to be cruel. You weren't cruel. You were honest, and I needed to hear it. Daniel took a breath. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to change. Lena studied him for a long moment. Change is hard, Mr. Brooks, especially when you've been doing things the same way for a long time. I know, but staying the same isn't working anymore. No, she agreed quietly. I don't suppose it is. She left without saying anything else, and Daniel watched her taillights disappear down the street, feeling the weight of everything broken and everything that might still be fixable. Over the following weeks, something shifted in the house on Maple Street. The change was subtle at first, like the way seasons transition before you fully realize summer has become fall. Daniel started coming home earlier, not every day, but often enough that Jamie stopped looking surprised when his father appeared before dinner. He asked Lena questions about her day, real questions that required more than yes or no answers, and he listened to her responses without checking his phone or thinking about work. Lena remained cautious, professional, keeping that careful distance she'd established after the Safe Harbor incident. But Daniel noticed small things. The way her shoulders relaxed slightly when he came into the kitchen, how she'd occasionally share a story about something funny Jamie had said during the day, the ghost of a smile when Daniel attempted to help with dinner and proved himself spectacularly incompetent at chopping vegetables. You're holding the knife wrong, she said one evening, watching him massacre a bell pepper. There's a wrong way to hold a knife? Apparently there's a Daniel Brooks way to hold a knife, which involves maximum inefficiency and potential finger loss. She moved beside him, her hand briefly covering his to adjust his grip. Like this. Curl your other fingers back so you don't lose a knuckle. The casual touch surprised them both. Lena stepped back quickly, and Daniel focused intently on the pepper, trying not to think about how her hand had felt warm against his. Jamie watched these interactions with the peculiar intensity of a child who notices everything adults think they're hiding. One night at dinner, he announced, "You guys are being weird." "Weird how?" Daniel asked. "I don't know. Different weird. You're home more and Lena smiles more and everyone's too polite." Jamie stabbed at his broccoli. "It's like when Tommy's parents got divorced and they were super nice to each other all the time. Are you getting divorced?" "We're not married, buddy," Lena said gently. "Then what's happening?" Daniel and Lena exchanged a glance. How did you explain to a 7-year-old that the adults in his life were trying to figure out how to be around each other after trust had been broken? "Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements," Daniel said carefully. "And then we have to work through them. That's what we're doing." "Did you have a fight?" "Something like that." "About what?" "About trust," Lena said, "and privacy. And how to treat people with respect." Jamie considered this. "Did Dad do something dumb?" Despite the tension, Lena laughed. "Why do you assume it was your dad?" "Because he does dumb stuff sometimes, like when he tried to make pancakes and set off the smoke alarm, or when he wore 2 different shoes to my parent-teacher conference." "Those were honest mistakes," Daniel protested. "They were dumb," Jamie said with the brutal honesty of childhood. "So what dumb thing did you do this time?" Daniel met Lena's eyes across the table. She gave a small nod, leaving it to him. "I didn't trust Lena when I should have," Daniel said. "I was worried about something that wasn't actually a problem, and instead of talking to her like an adult, I did something that hurt her feelings." "Did you apologize?" "I did." "Did she accept?" "We're still working on that part." Jamie looked at Lena. "Are you going to leave like the other nannies?" The question hung in the air, heavy with all of Jamie's accumulated losses. Every nanny who'd quit, every promise of consistency that had dissolved, every adult who'd proven temporary. No, buddy, Lena said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. Your dad made a mistake, but we're working through it. Adults can disagree and still care about each other. Do you care about my dad? Lena's cheeks flushed slightly. I care about both of you. You're important to me. Dad, do you care about Lena? Daniel felt like he was in a deposition, being cross-examined by the world's smallest, most persistent attorney. Yes, very much. Then you should probably stop doing dumb things. Agreed. And maybe get her flowers or something. That's what they do in movies. After Jamie went to bed, Lena lingered in the kitchen while Daniel loaded the dishwasher. The silence between them was less hostile than it had been, softer around the edges. He's perceptive, Lena said finally. Too perceptive. I think he's been reading psychology books. He's just a kid who's learned to pay attention to adult moods. That's what happens when your world falls apart once. You start watching for signs it might happen again. Daniel closed the dishwasher and turned to face her. I'm sorry. I know I keep saying that, but I am, for all of it. And I know you are. Lena leaned against the counter. And I appreciate that you're trying. I can see the effort. But trust isn't rebuilt overnight. You showed me who you become when you're scared, someone who spies instead of communicates. That's hard to forget. I understand. Do you? Lena's voice was gentle but direct. Because I need you to really understand what you did. Those kids at Safe Harbor, they've been surveilled their whole lives. Social workers showing up unannounced, foster parents checking their belongings, teachers watching for signs of trauma. They're never allowed privacy, never allowed to just exist without someone monitoring them. I didn't think about it that way. I know you didn't. That's the problem. You saw a mystery that made you uncomfortable, and you solved it the way you solve business problems, through investigation and control. But people aren't business problems, Daniel. The use of his first name startled him. She'd never called him anything but Mr. Brooks in all their months together. Sorry, she said quickly. That was unprofessional. No, it's fine. Actually, I prefer it. Mr. Brooks makes me feel like my father. Your mother calls you Daniel. She's my mother. She's allowed. Lena smiled slightly. What would you prefer, if not Mr. Brooks? Daniel is fine. When we're alone, I mean, in front of Jamie, whatever feels appropriate. Okay, Daniel. She tested the name like trying on new clothes. That's going to take some getting used to. We've got time. The words hung between them, a promise and a question. Did they have time? Was Lena really staying, or was she just being kind to a grieving child while planning her exit? I meant what I said to Jamie, Lena offered, reading his expression. I'm not leaving. I care about him too much. And despite recent events, I think I'm good for him. You're more than good for him. You're essential. Don't do that. Do what? Put that weight on me. I'm not essential. I'm helpful. I'm consistent. I care deeply. But Jamie would survive without me. Kids are resilient. I'm not sure I would survive without you. The confession came out before Daniel could stop it, raw and honest and probably wildly inappropriate. Lena's eyes widened. Daniel? I don't mean that in a romantic way, he said quickly, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. I just mean that you brought life back into this house. Before you, we were just going through motions. Jamie was drowning, and I was drowning, and we were both pretending to be fine. You taught us how to actually live again. Lena was quiet for a long moment. That's a lot of responsibility to put on one person. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to pressure you or make you feel obligated. I just wanted you to know what you mean to us. I appreciate that. But Daniel, you need to understand something. I can help Jamie heal. I can be consistent and caring and present. But I can't fix everything. I can't replace his mother. And I can't be the only source of light in your life. That's not sustainable for any of us. What are you saying? I'm saying you need more than just me and Jamie. You need friends, community, connection. You need a life outside of work and parenting. Because if you make me and Jamie your whole world, eventually that weight will crush all of us. Daniel had never thought about it that way, but she was right. Since Sarah's death, his world had contracted to 2 points: his son and his work. Everything else had fallen away. Friends had stopped calling after he'd declined enough invitations. His hobbies had disappeared. He couldn't remember the last time he'd done something purely for himself. "I don't know how to do that anymore," he admitted. "Build a life, I mean. Make friends." Sarah was the social one. She made plans and invited people over and kept us connected. Without her, I just stopped. "I know it's hard, but you have to try. For Jamie's sake as much as your own. He needs to see you as a whole person with interests and relationships, not just as his dad who works all the time." "Will you help me?" Lena raised an eyebrow. "Help you make friends? I'm not running a social skills training program here." "No, but you could tell me when I'm being too isolated. Call me out on it the way you call me out on other things. That's not my job." "I know, but you're good at it. The calling me out part, I mean." She smiled despite herself. "You make it easy. You're very call-outable." Is that a word? It is now. The next morning brought rain, the heavy Seattle kind that turned the world gray and made everything feel muted. Lena arrived with damp hair and rain-spotted shoulders, shaking out her umbrella in the foyer. "Monsoon season, apparently," she said. Jamie thundered down the stairs, already complaining about having to wear rain boots. "They make my feet feel weird." "Your feet are weird," Lena countered. "The boots are just honest about it." "That doesn't even make sense." "Welcome to life, buddy. Most of it doesn't make sense." Daniel watched them bicker affectionately while Jamie struggled into his boots and something in his chest loosened. This, he thought, this easy warmth, this casual teasing, this normalcy. This was what he'd been afraid of losing. After Lena left with Jamie for school, Daniel forced himself to do something he'd been avoiding. He called his college roommate Marcus, who he hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Brooks, is this a pocket dial?" Marcus answered. "No, it's intentional. How are you?" "Suspicious. You never call unless someone died or you need something. Nobody died, right?" "No, I just wanted to talk." There was a pause. "Okay, who is this really? Because Daniel Brooks doesn't just want to talk." "I'm trying to be better about staying connected." "Did your therapist assign this as homework?" "Something like that." Marcus laughed. "All right, I'll bite. What's going on?" They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. Marcus's new job, his wife's pregnancy, mutual friends from college who were now scattered across the country. It felt awkward at first, like trying to use muscles that had atrophied, but by the end Daniel realized he'd enjoyed it. "We should get lunch," Marcus said, "assuming you eat lunch and don't just survive on coffee and spite." "I eat lunch occasionally. Next week. Tuesday. I'll text you a place downtown." After they hung up, Daniel felt oddly accomplished, like he'd just completed some difficult task. One phone call. One small step toward having a life outside of work and Jamie. Lena noticed when she returned that afternoon. "You look different." "Different how?" "Less haunted, more human." "I called a friend. We're having lunch next week." Lena's face lit up. "Daniel, that's great. See? You can do this." "It's just lunch. It's a start. And starts matter." That evening, while Lena was helping Jamie with homework, Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Brooks, this is Angela Chen from Safe Harbor Community Center." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Yes?" "I'm calling because we received an anonymous donation last week, a substantial one. And we've been trying to track down the donor to thank them properly, but the check came with no return address. The bank was able to tell us it came from your account." Daniel closed his eyes. He'd sent the check 10 days ago, deliberately anonymous, not trying to impress Lena, but simply because the center needed funding, and he had it to give. "I'd prefer to remain anonymous," he said. "Of course, and we respect that, but I wanted to reach out personally to let you know what this means for us. We've been struggling to make rent, and several of our therapy programs were at risk of shutting down. This donation, it saved us. It saved the kids we serve. I'm glad I could help. Can I ask how you heard about us? We don't exactly have a robust marketing presence." Daniel hesitated. "Someone who volunteers with you made an impression on me. They didn't ask for money or solicit donations. I just saw the work you do and wanted to support it." "Would this be Lena? Lena Carter?" "Yes." "She's remarkable. Those kids adore her. She has a particular gift with the ones who've been through trauma. She just sits with them, doesn't rush them, lets them be wherever they are emotionally. It's rare to find someone with that kind of patience. Yes, Daniel agreed quietly. It is rare. Well, thank you again. If you ever change your mind about anonymity, we'd love to acknowledge your contribution publicly. We're planning a small gala next month to raise awareness and funds. You'd be welcome to attend. I'll think about it. After hanging up, Daniel found Lena in the living room reading with Jamie. His son was tucked against her side, following along as she did voices for each character. The scene was so domestic, so peaceful, it made his heart ache. Everything okay? Lena asked, noticing his expression. Yeah, just work stuff. She studied him for a moment, clearly not entirely convinced, but didn't push. Later, after Jamie was in bed, she found Daniel in his office staring at his computer screen without actually seeing it. You're a terrible liar, she said from the doorway. Excuse me? Earlier, when you said it was work stuff, you had the same expression you get when you're wrestling with something personal, not professional. How do you know I have different expressions for those things? I pay attention. Lena came into the office and sat in the chair across from his desk. What's going on? Daniel debated lying again, but he was trying to be better about honesty. Safe Harbor called me. Her expression shifted. Why would they? Understanding dawned. You donated. Anonymously. Daniel, I know what you said. About not wanting my guilt money. About those kids not being a project. But it wasn't about any of that. It was just, they need resources and I have them. Simple math. How much did you give? Does it matter? Yes. Daniel named the figure. Lena's eyes widened. That's not guilt money, she said quietly. That's life-changing money. For the center, I mean. Angela said they were about to lose their lease and some therapy programs were shutting down. They were. We've been scrambling for months trying to figure out how to keep the doors open. Lena shook her head. I can't believe you did that. Are you angry? No, I'm confused. You did exactly what I asked you not to do, but somehow it doesn't feel like you're trying to fix things or control the situation. It feels genuine. It is genuine. I didn't do it to impress you or to make myself feel better about following you. I did it because those kids matter, and the work matters, and I'm in a position to help. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Thank you. That's going to make a real difference for a lot of children. Angela invited me to a gala next month. I probably won't go. Why not? Because showing up feels like making it about me. The donation was supposed to be anonymous. But you could meet the kids, see the space, understand what your money is actually doing. That's not making it about you. That's being engaged. Daniel thought about Dr. Morrison's words about showing up instead of writing checks from a distance. Would you be there at the gala? Probably. I help organize it every year. Then maybe I'll consider it. You should. It might be good for you to see that there are people doing important work outside of commercial real estate. Is that a dig at my career choice? A gentle one, Daniel smiled. Fair enough. Lena stood to leave, then paused at the door. Daniel? That thing you did, the anonymous donation, that's the kind of showing up that matters. You didn't make a big announcement or attach conditions. You just helped because you could. That's good. After she left, Daniel sat in his office feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time, proud of himself. Not for making money or closing a deal, but for doing something that mattered to someone other than himself. The following weeks brought a tentative thaw in his relationship with Lena. They still maintained professional boundaries, but the sharp edges had softened. She called him Daniel when they were alone. He asked her opinion on things beyond Jamie's schedule. They occasionally ate dinner together after Jamie went to bed, talking about nothing important, books they'd read, shows they'd watched, childhood memories. Daniel learned that Lena had grown up in foster care herself, bouncing between homes until she'd aged out of the system at 18. She'd put herself through community college, working 3 jobs, studied child development because she wanted to be the adult for other kids that she'd never had herself. Is that why you volunteer at Safe Harbor? Daniel asked one evening over leftover pizza. Partially. I know what it's like to feel invisible, like you're just a problem that gets passed around. Those kids need someone to see them as actual people, not case files. You're remarkable. Lena deflected the compliment. I'm just doing what should be normal. Every kid deserves at least one adult who shows up consistently. Did you have that? Someone who showed up? No, but I turned out okay anyway. She said it lightly, but Daniel heard the pain underneath. I'm sorry you had to do it alone. I wasn't entirely alone. There were a few good foster parents, some teachers who cared, enough to get me through. Lena picked at the pizza crust. It's why I'm so protective of my work at Safe Harbor. Those kids are getting a chance I didn't have. Actual support, therapy, adults who stick around. I don't want anything to mess that up. Including wealthy donors who might make it complicated? Including that. For what it's worth, I have no interest in complicating anything. I just want to help if I can. I believe you, and I appreciate it more than I probably showed when I found out. The gala invitation sat on Daniel's desk for 2 weeks before he finally RSVP'd yes. When Lena found out, she looked pleased and nervous at the same time. You don't have to come if it makes you uncomfortable, she said. I want to come. Unless you'd rather I didn't. No, it's fine, good even. Fine. Just, those kids can be a lot. They're wonderful, but they've been through trauma. They might not react to you the way you expect. I work with difficult people for a living. I think I can handle some traumatized children. Lena's expression suggested she wasn't entirely convinced, but she let it drop. The night of the gala arrived with unseasonably warm weather. Daniel dressed carefully in a suit that felt too formal, but was apparently appropriate according to the invitation. He'd arranged for his mother to watch Jamie, enduring her knowing looks and pointed questions about why he was suddenly attending charity events. It's for a good cause, he'd said. I'm sure it is. And it has nothing to do with a certain nanny? She volunteers there, that's all. His mother had just smiled and told him to have fun. Safe Harbor looked different than it had the night Daniel had followed Lena there. The exterior was the same rundown brick, but inside someone had hung string lights and set up tables with white cloths. There were maybe 50 people present, a mix of volunteers, donors, and what appeared to be former clients who'd aged out of the program. Daniel spotted Lena immediately. She wore a simple blue dress and was talking to a teenage girl with vibrant purple hair. When she saw him, her face lit up with genuine pleasure. You came, she said, excusing herself to greet him. I said I would. People say a lot of things. Showing up is different. She seemed nervous, her hands fidgeting with her dress. Thank you for being here. Before Daniel could respond, a small tornado in the form of a 6-year-old girl crashed into Lena's legs. Lena! Lena! Come see what I made! It's a painting of you, but I made your hair too big, and Ms. Angela says it's abstract. Maya, use your inside voice, Lena said gently, smoothing the girl's hair. I'd love to see your painting. But first, this is my friend Mr. Brooks. Can you say hello? Maya looked up at Daniel with enormous brown eyes. Are you rich? Maya, Mrs. Angela said a rich person donated money. Are you the rich person? Daniel crouched down to her level. I help when I can, but the real helpers are people like Lena who show up every day. Lena's the best. Maya stated it as incontrovertible fact. She helped me learn to read. I was scared of words, but she said words are just friends we haven't met yet. Now I love words. That's wonderful. Maya grabbed Lena's hand. Come see my painting. As Lena was dragged away, she called over her shoulder, Mingle! Meet people! I'll find you later. Daniel found himself standing alone in a room full of strangers, completely out of his element. This wasn't a business networking event where he knew the rules. This was something else entirely, messy and loud and full of people who seemed to actually care about each other. You must be the mysterious donor, a voice said beside him. Daniel turned to find Angela Chen, the woman who'd called him weeks ago. She was smaller than he'd pictured, with gray-streaked black hair and laugh lines around her eyes. I tried to stay anonymous. Lena told me, don't worry, your secret's safe. I just wanted to thank you in person. Angela's handshake was firm. You saved this place, literally. We were about to close, and now we can plan for the future. I'm glad I could help. Come on, let me show you around. You should see what your investment is actually doing. Angela led him through the center, explaining each program. the tutoring room where volunteers helped with homework, the art therapy space where kids process trauma through painting and sculpture, the small library filled with donated books, the kitchen where they taught basic cooking skills to teenagers aging out of foster care. In each space, Daniel saw evidence of care, handmade decorations, organized supplies, spaces designed specifically for children who needed safety and consistency. This wasn't some impersonal institution, it was a home. "This is the heart of it," Angela said, showing him a quiet room with beanbags and soft lighting. The calm space. When kids get overwhelmed, they can come here and just exist. No expectations, no pressure. Sometimes that's what they need most. Permission to not be okay. Daniel thought about Jamie, about how many times his son had needed exactly that. "It's remarkable what you've built here. It's remarkable what people like Lena maintain. I can fundraise and organize, but volunteers like her, they're the soul of this place. She's been coming 3 to 4 nights a week for 3 years, never misses. Even when she was sick with the flu last year, she called to check on her kids." Her kids? That's what she calls them. Not possessively, but with deep affection. There's a boy, Marcus, 14, been in 7 foster homes, who only trusts Lena. A girl named Sophie who's slowly learning to talk again after years of selective mutism. And Maya, who you met. Lena's been working with her since she was 3. Daniel watched through the window as Lena sat with a group of children, listening intently to something a young boy was saying. Her whole attention was focused on him, like nothing else in the world mattered. "She's special," Angela said. "I hope you know that." "I do." "Then don't mess it up." Angela's voice was kind but firm. "Good people who actually show up are rare. Lena's one of them. Treat her accordingly." The gala continued with speeches and a silent auction and stories from former clients about how Safe Harbor had changed their lives. Daniel bid on a few items: art pieces made by the kids, a dinner donated by a local restaurant, more to contribute than because he wanted the items themselves. Finally, Lena found him again. "You survived," she said. "Barely. Maya asked me 17 questions about dinosaurs. I knew the answer to 0 of them. She does that. Test people to see if they'll engage or dismiss her. Which did I do? You engaged. I watched. You pulled out your phone and looked up answers with her. That mattered." They stood together watching the room full of people eating, talking, laughing. So many of them had stories like Lena's, hard childhoods, systemic failures, adults who'd let them down. And yet here they were, showing up for the next generation, trying to break cycles of trauma. "Thank you for coming," Lena said quietly. "I know this isn't your usual scene." "No, but maybe it should be." She looked at him, surprised. "What does that mean?" "It means I've spent 2 years hiding in work and isolation, convincing myself that was safety. But this," he gestured at the room, "this is what actually matters. Connection. Showing up. Being part of something bigger than yourself." "That sounds like therapy talk." "It is. Dr. Morrison's been working on me." "Good." Lena bumped his shoulder gently with hers. "You needed working on." The night wound down slowly. Daniel helped stack chairs and clean up, following Lena's lead. The teenage girl with purple hair, Sophie, he learned, came over to say goodbye, signing something to Lena with her hands. Lena signed back, her fingers moving with practiced fluency. Sophie smiled and left. "You know sign language." "I learned for Sophie. She needed someone who could communicate on her terms." Lena stacked another chair. "It's not that hard. Just takes practice and caring enough to try." As they worked side by side in companionable silence, Daniel realized something had fundamentally shifted. He wasn't just trying to win back Lena's trust or prove he wasn't the person who'd followed her that night. He was genuinely showing up, engaging with a part of her life that mattered, meeting her in her world instead of requiring her to exist only in his. And it felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. They walked to their cars together through the quiet parking lot, the sounds of the gala fading behind them. Streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. "That wasn't so terrible, was it?" Lena asked. "It was actually good. Strange, but good." "Strange how?" Daniel searched for the right words. I spend most of my time in rooms where people talk about profit margins and market share. Tonight, everyone was talking about kids learning to read or gaining confidence or just surviving another day. It's a different kind of success. It's the kind that actually matters. Yeah, I'm starting to realize that. They reached Lena's car first. She unlocked it, but didn't get in, leaning against the driver's side door instead. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "Why did you really come tonight? And don't say it was just to support the center. You could have done that with your donation." Daniel considered deflecting, but decided against it. They were past that now, past the careful evasions and protective distance. "I came because I wanted to understand your world, the part of your life that has nothing to do with me or Jamie. I wanted to see what matters to you." "And what did you learn?" "That you're even more remarkable than I thought. That those kids love you for good reason. That you've built something real here, something that makes an actual difference." Lena looked down at her keys. "I'm not remarkable, Daniel. I'm just someone who showed up and kept showing up. That's all these kids need, consistency." "That's what Jamie needed too. What we both needed." "I know." Her voice was soft. "That's why I couldn't leave, even when I was angry at you, because showing up matters more than being right." The words settled between them, heavy with meaning. Daniel wanted to say something, to acknowledge what she'd just admitted, but before he could find the words, Lena spoke again. "I should go, early morning tomorrow with Jamie." "Right, of course." She got into her car and Daniel watched her drive away, that familiar ache in his chest returning. He was falling for her. Had probably been falling for her since the day she'd sat with Jamie during his meltdown about shoes and simply waited out the storm. But admitting it felt dangerous, like opening himself up to loss all over again. The next morning brought chaos. Jamie woke up with a fever, his forehead hot to the touch, and his eyes glassy with exhaustion. By the time Lena arrived at 8, Daniel was already on his third call to the pediatrician's office. "They can see him at 11, he said, hanging up. "But I have a closing at 10 that I absolutely cannot miss. The deal's been in negotiation for 6 months." "Go to your meeting," Lena said calmly, already feeling Jamie's forehead. "I'll take him to the doctor." "Are you sure?" "Daniel, this is literally my job. I take care of Jamie. That includes sick days." "I know, but nothing. You go do your real estate thing. We'll handle this." Daniel hesitated, torn between professional obligation and the instinct to stay with his sick child. Jamie made the decision for him by reaching for Lena from where he lay on the couch. "Lena can take me," he said weakly. "You'll just hover and ask too many questions." "I don't hover." Both Lena and Jamie looked at him with identical expressions of loving skepticism. "Fine. I hover slightly." Daniel grabbed his briefcase. "Call me after the appointment, and if it's anything serious, I'll call you immediately. Now go before you're late." The closing ran long, complicated by last-minute contract amendments, and a buyer who suddenly developed cold feet. Daniel tried to focus but kept checking his phone, waiting for updates. Finally, at 12:30, Lena called. "Ear infection," she said without preamble. "Already picked up antibiotics. He's home and resting." "Did the doctor say—" "Everything the doctor said is written on the discharge papers, which I'll show you when you get home. He needs rest, fluids, and medication every 8 hours. Standard stuff." "Thank you. Really, I don't know what I'd do without you." There was a pause on the line. "You'd figure it out. But I'm glad you don't have to." When Daniel got home at 3, he found Jamie asleep on the couch with a blanket tucked around him. Lena was in the kitchen making soup from scratch, the scent of chicken and vegetables filling the house. "He ate half a grilled cheese and some crackers," she reported. "Took his medicine without complaining. Should sleep for a while." "You made soup." "He needs something gentle on his stomach. This is my grandmother's recipe." "Well, my third foster mother's recipe, technically, but she's the closest thing I had to a grandmother." Daniel watched her chop celery with practiced efficiency. "You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to. Besides, I'm making enough for all of us. You look like you haven't eaten today." "I haven't." "Then sit. It'll be ready in 20 minutes." Daniel sat at the kitchen island, watching Lena work. She moved through his kitchen like she belonged there, knew where everything was without asking, hummed quietly while she cooked. It struck him that she'd become woven into the fabric of their lives so completely that he couldn't imagine the house without her. "The closing went well?" she asked. "Eventually, lots of last-minute drama, but we got there." "You don't sound very excited." "It's a good deal. Solid investment." But standing in that conference room arguing about clause wording while Jamie was sick, I just kept thinking about what you said at the gala, about what kind of success actually matters. Lena stirred the soup. "I wasn't trying to make you feel bad about your work." "I know, but you made me think about it differently. I've built a career on acquiring property and maximizing profit. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not exactly changing lives the way Safe Harbor does. Not everyone can run a nonprofit. Someone has to make money and keep the economy moving. You're being generous. I'm being realistic. The world needs different kinds of work. Yours isn't less valuable just because it's different from mine." Daniel appreciated the kindness, but it didn't fully ease the restlessness he'd been feeling. "When Sarah was alive, we used to talk about doing something meaningful together. Starting a foundation, maybe, or funding scholarships. Then she died, and I just stopped thinking about anything beyond survival." "That makes sense. Grief narrows your world." "It's been 2 years. At some point, it stops being grief and starts being a choice to stay small." Lena turned off the stove and brought 2 bowls of soup to the island. "So make a different choice. You're already starting to, the donation, coming to the gala, actually showing up in Jamie's life instead of just managing it from a distance. Those are different choices. They don't feel like enough. They're a start. That's all anything is, a start." They ate in comfortable silence while Jamie slept. The soup was perfect, warm and soothing. Daniel found himself studying Lena's face, the small scar on her chin she'd never explained, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the strand of hair that always escaped her ponytail. "What?" she asked, catching him looking. "Nothing. Just thinking." "About?" "About how lucky we are that you walked into our lives." Lena's cheeks flushed. "You're getting sentimental because your kid is sick. It makes people emotional." "Maybe, but it's still true." Over the next few days, while Jamie recovered, Daniel found himself spending more time at home. He took calls from his office instead of going downtown, scheduled meetings for early morning or evening so he could be present during the day. Jamie didn't seem to notice the change, too focused on feeling miserable and milking the sympathy for extra screen time. But Lena noticed. "You know he's fine, right?" she said on the 3rd day. "Ear infections are common. He's not dying." "I know. I just wanted to be here." "Why?" "Because I've missed too much, and I'm tired of missing things." Something shifted in Lena's expression, softening around the edges. "Okay, just don't hover. He needs space to rest, not constant monitoring." Daniel tried not to hover, but it was difficult. He kept finding excuses to check on Jamie, bringing water, adjusting blankets, asking if he needed anything. Finally, his son looked up from his tablet with exasperation. "Dad, I'm fine. Go do something else." "I'm just making sure." "You're hovering. Lena said you would." She did not. "She did. She said you have good intentions but poor execution when it comes to sick days." Daniel looked at Lena, who was trying not to smile. "Poor execution?" "You're very intense about caregiving. It's sweet but overwhelming." "I'm not intense." "You brought him water 4 times in an hour. He has a kidney infection, not dehydration." "Ear infection," Jamie corrected. "And I don't need more water. I need you to go away so I can watch my show." Properly chastised, Daniel retreated to his office. But he found it hard to concentrate on work. Instead, he kept thinking about what Dr. Morrison had said about tearing down walls and actually living, about Lena's words regarding different choices. He pulled up Safe Harbor's website again, reading through their programs more carefully this time. The tutoring program caught his attention. They needed volunteers to help kids with homework, especially in math and science. Daniel had been good at math once, before business school, and real estate had consumed his life. Without overthinking it, he filled out the volunteer application. 3 days later, Angela called him. "Got your application," she said, sounding pleased. "Didn't expect to hear from you so soon after the gala. I want to do more than write checks." "Music to my ears. We need math tutors desperately. Most of our volunteers are better with reading and art. Can you commit to one evening a week? Daniel thought about his schedule, about all the evening meetings he routinely scheduled. Yes, Tuesdays work. Perfect. Lena usually works Tuesdays. She can show you the ropes. After hanging up, Daniel felt simultaneously excited and terrified. What did he know about tutoring traumatized children? He worked with numbers and contracts, not people with complex emotional needs. He didn't tell Lena immediately. Part of him wanted to surprise her, to show her he was serious about showing up, but mostly he was nervous about her reaction. Would she think he was invading her space, using her work to get closer to her? The first Tuesday, he arranged for his mother to watch Jamie and drove to Safe Harbor with sweaty palms and a pounding heart. The center looked different in the evening light, warm and welcoming. He could hear children's voices inside, laughter and occasional shouts. Angela met him at the door. Ready for this? Probably not. Perfect. The best volunteers are the ones who are a little scared. Means you take it seriously. She led him inside to the tutoring room. Ground rules. Don't push too hard. Don't take it personally if kids are resistant. And remember that relationship comes before curriculum. These kids have had enough adults trying to fix them. Just be present. Lena was already there, working with Maya on spelling words. She looked up when Daniel entered, and her expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been pleasure. You volunteered, she said. I applied a few days ago. Thought you could use help with the math side of things. But you... She stopped, seemed to reconsider what she was about to say. That's great. We definitely need math support. Angela introduced Daniel to his first student, a 10-year-old named Marcus with guarded eyes and a reputation for being difficult. The boy slouched in his chair, arms crossed, radiating hostility. I don't need help, Marcus said immediately. Okay. Daniel sat down across from him. What do you need? The question seemed to surprise Marcus. What? You don't need help, so what do you need? To not be here. Where would you rather be? I don't know. Anywhere. Daniel nodded. I get that. Sometimes places that are supposed to help feel like just another obligation. Marcus's eyes narrowed. You're supposed to tell me this place is great and I should be grateful. I'm not going to tell you what to feel. Your feelings are your own. They sat in silence for a moment. Daniel could feel Lena watching from across the room, but resisted the urge to look at her. What grade are you in? Daniel asked. 5th? What are you working on in math? Fractions. They're stupid. Fractions are very stupid, Daniel agreed. Whoever invented them was clearly a sadist. Despite himself, Marcus smiled slightly. My teacher says they're important. They are. Annoying but important, like vegetables or dentist appointments. You're weird. I've been told that. Want to show me what you're stuck on? Slowly, reluctantly, Marcus pulled out his homework. For the next 40 minutes, they worked through fraction problems. Daniel didn't push, didn't lecture, just explained concepts when asked and waited patiently when Marcus needed time to think. By the end of the session, the boy had completed his homework and looked almost proud of himself. Same time next week? Daniel asked. Marcus shrugged, but it was a less hostile shrug than the first one. Whatever. After the kids left, Daniel helped clean up the tutoring room. Lena approached him with an expression he couldn't quite read. That was good, she said. What you did with Marcus? I didn't do anything, just sat with him. Exactly. Most people try to force engagement or get frustrated by his attitude. You just met him where he was. Seemed like the right approach. It was. Lena paused. Why didn't you tell me you were applying to volunteer? Honestly, I was nervous about how you'd react. Why would I react badly to you wanting to help? Because this is your space. I didn't want you to think I was invading it or trying to impress you or... Daniel, she touched his arm gently. I think it's wonderful that you're here, really. It shows you meant what you said about wanting to do more than write checks. I did mean it. I know. And for what it's worth, watching you with Marcus, you're good at this. You have the right instincts. The praise warmed him more than it probably should have. Thanks. He's a tough kid. He's been through 7 foster homes. Each one promised him safety and then gave up on him. He doesn't trust adults not to disappear. Then I'll keep showing up. You say that now. But showing up every week, even when it's inconvenient or you're tired or you have something else you'd rather do, that's harder than it sounds. I know, but I want to try. Over the following weeks, Tuesday evenings became the highlight of Daniel's week. He worked with Marcus every session, slowly building trust through consistency and patience. The boy was brilliant when he wanted to be, quick with numbers and capable of complex reasoning. But he'd been let down so many times that he protected himself with hostility and low expectations. Daniel understood that protective instinct. He'd been doing the same thing in his own way, keeping people at arm's length, assuming the worst, building walls to avoid being hurt again. One Tuesday, Marcus actually smiled while explaining how he'd solved a particularly difficult problem. See? I told you I could do it. You did. I never doubted you. Yeah, you did. At first. You're right. I did. I'm sorry for that. Marcus looked surprised. Adults don't usually apologize. Then they should. Everyone makes mistakes. Even you? Especially me. I've made a lot of mistakes lately. Like what? Daniel considered how honest to be. I didn't trust someone I should have trusted. I let my fear make me suspicious instead of talking to them like an adult. What happened? I hurt their feelings, and I'm still working on making it right. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, Is it Lena? The person you didn't trust? Daniel shouldn't have been surprised that a perceptive kid had noticed the dynamic between them. Yeah, it was Lena. She's nice. You shouldn't hurt her feelings. I know. I'm trying to do better. Are you going to marry her? The question echoed Jamie's from weeks ago. Apparently, everyone except Daniel had opinions about his relationship with Lena. We're not. It's complicated. My foster dad says that about his girlfriend. Then he married her. Now she's my foster mom. Is that good or bad? Marcus shrugged. Good, I guess. She makes him less grumpy. And she doesn't treat me like a problem. After the session, Lena found Daniel in the parking lot. Marcus actually laughed tonight. I heard him. That's progress. He's a good kid under all the armor. He is, and you're good with him, patient in a way that matters. They stood in the cool evening air, the center's lights warm behind them. Daniel wanted to say something, to acknowledge the shift between them, the way these Tuesday evenings had become something more than professional obligation. But before he could find the words, Lena spoke. I'm glad you're here, Daniel. Not just for the kids, though they benefit from having you. I'm glad you're here because it means you're actually trying. That matters. I want to be someone worth your trust again. You're getting there. It wasn't a declaration of forgiveness, but it was something, and for now that was enough. At home, Jamie noticed the changes too. One evening at dinner, he observed, You're happier lately. Am I? Yeah, you smile more, and you're home for dinner now. Is that good? It's weird, but good weird. Jamie pushed peas around his plate. Lena's happier too. How can you tell? She hums when she cooks now, and she doesn't have that face anymore. What face? The worried face, like when she's thinking hard about something sad. Daniel hadn't realized Jamie paid such close attention to the adults in his life. But of course he did. Children who'd experienced loss became hypervigilant, constantly monitoring for signs of change or danger. I think we're all doing better, Daniel said carefully. Things were hard for a while, but they're getting easier. Because you stopped being weird with Lena? Was I being weird with Lena? Super weird. You kept looking at her like you wanted to say something, but then you wouldn't say it. And she'd look at you the same way. It was awkward. Out of the mouths of babes. We had some things to work through. Did you work through them? We're working on it. Good. Because I like when you're both here and everything feels normal, like a family. The word hung in the air, family. That's what they'd become, the three of them, somewhere along the way. Not quite the traditional structure, but something real nonetheless. A single father learning to open up, a nanny who taught them both how to hope again, and a child healing from loss with the help of two adults who showed up for him every day. That weekend, Daniel took Jamie to the park and ran into Marcus from the tutoring program. The boy was with his current foster parents, a middle-aged couple who looked tired but kind. Mr. Brooks! Marcus ran over, actually excited to see him. "This is my foster dad, Tom, and my foster mom, Lisa." Daniel shook hands with the couple, who seemed pleased that Marcus had someone he was enthusiastic about. "He talks about your Tuesday sessions all the time," Lisa said. "Says you're teaching him that math isn't evil." "But math is still evil," Marcus corrected, "but less evil than before." "That's progress," Daniel said, smiling. Jamie, who'd been playing on the swings, came over to investigate. "Who's this?" "This is Marcus. I help him with math at Safe Harbor." The two boys sized each other up with that peculiar intensity children have. "You go to the place where Lena volunteers?" Jamie asked. "Yeah, you know Lena? She works with my dad, takes care of me." "Is your mom dead?" The blunt question would have horrified adults, but Jamie just nodded. "Yeah, yours?" "Don't know, never met her. Been in foster care since I was a baby." "That sucks." "Yeah." And just like that, they understood each other. Two kids who'd experienced loss in different ways, meeting on common ground. They ran off to play together while the adults watched. "That's your son?" Tom asked. "Yeah, Jamie's 7. Marcus doesn't usually warm up to other kids. He's learned to keep distance. Jamie's the same way since his mom died. But sometimes kids recognize each other's hurt. They watch the boys play for a while, their laughter mixing with the sounds of other children. Daniel felt something settle in his chest, a sense of purpose he'd been missing. This work at Safe Harbor, these connections with kids who needed consistent adults in their lives, it mattered in a way his business deals never quite had. Later that evening, after Jamie was in bed, Daniel called Lena. He'd started doing that occasionally, calling her in the evening after their official work hours, talking about nothing important just to hear her voice. "Hey," she answered. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just wanted to tell you something. We ran into Marcus at the park today." "How did that go?" "Good. He and Jamie bonded over dead and absent mothers. Kids are morbidly efficient at finding common ground." Lena laughed. "That sounds about right. Marcus has a good heart under all that protective anger. He's a lot like Jamie in some ways. They both learned early that people leave, which is why it's so important that we don't. Leave, I mean." Daniel heard what she wasn't saying directly, that his consistency mattered, that showing up week after week was building trust, not just with Marcus, but with her too. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Good. Neither am I." The words were simple, but they felt like a promise, like something shifting and settling into place. Daniel wanted to say more, to tell her that his feelings had grown beyond gratitude and respect into something deeper, but the timing didn't feel right. There was still work to do, trust to rebuild, foundations to strengthen. So instead he said, "Thank you for everything. For Jamie, for giving me a second chance, for being patient while I figure out how to actually live again." "You're doing the work, Daniel. I'm just witnessing it." "You're more than a witness. You're the reason I started trying." There was a pause on the line, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Lena spoke, her voice soft. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's Wednesday, which means Jamie has soccer practice, and you promised you'd actually attend this time instead of working late." "I'll be there." "I know you will." After they hung up, Daniel sat in his quiet house thinking about the past few months. About how following Lena that night had been both the worst decision and somehow the catalyst for everything good that followed. He'd broken her trust, yes, but in doing so he'd been forced to confront who he'd become. Isolated, suspicious, managing life from a safe distance instead of actually living it. Now he was tutoring kids who reminded him of his own son, attending charity galas and stacking chairs afterward, having real conversations with friends he'd neglected, showing up for soccer practices and school events, building something that looked like a life instead of just an existence. And Lena was at the center of it all, not because she'd demanded changes, but because she'd simply shown him what actual presence looked like. What it meant to show up consistently, to care without controlling, to offer support without conditions. He was falling for her. Had been falling for months, probably. But he was also becoming someone worthy of falling for. Someone who kept his promises, who did more than write checks, who understood that real connection required vulnerability and risk. For the first time since Sarah's death, Daniel felt ready for that risk. Ready to hope for something beyond survival. Ready to believe that maybe, just maybe, His story wasn't finished after all. The shift happened gradually, like dawn breaking so slowly, you don't notice until suddenly there's light everywhere. Daniel kept showing up at Safe Harbor every Tuesday, kept being present for Jamie's life in ways he'd avoided for 2 years, kept having conversations with Lena that went deeper than schedules and meal plans. And somewhere in all that showing up, the careful distance between them began to dissolve. It was small things at first. Lena started staying for dinner more often, not because Jamie asked, but because Daniel invited her and she said yes. Their conversation stretched longer, moved from the kitchen to the living room, covered topics that had nothing to do with work. Daniel learned that Lena loved old movies but hated romantic comedies because they trivialized real connection, that she'd taught herself to play guitar, but only when she was alone because performing made her anxious, that she'd once wanted to be a teacher but couldn't afford the student loans, so she'd found other ways to work with children. Lena learned that Daniel had played piano as a child, that he still sometimes woke up reaching for Sarah, and the grief of her absence could hit him out of nowhere even after 2 years, that he'd built his business as much out of fear of failure as ambition, that his father had been distant and critical, and Daniel had spent his whole life trying to prove something to a man who died never quite satisfied. They were learning each other, peeling back layers, building something that felt both fragile and surprisingly strong. One evening in late October, after Jamie had gone to bed, they sat in Daniel's living room with mugs of tea. Rain pattered against the windows, and the house felt cozy in a way it hadn't in years. "Marcus told me today that he got an A on his math test," Lena said. "First A he's gotten all year. He worked hard for it. Kid's brilliant when he believes in himself. You're good for him. He needs a consistent male figure who doesn't give up on him." Daniel thought about that. "I almost did give up, 3rd week, when he threw his textbook across the room and told me to leave him alone. I wanted to walk away." "But you didn't." "No." Lena set down her mug. "You've changed, Daniel. Really changed. Not just surface adjustments, but fundamental shifts in how you approach things." "I had to. The person I was after Sarah died. That wasn't sustainable. I was barely surviving, and I was teaching Jamie to do the same, to just get through days instead of actually living them." "What changed it? What made you decide to actually do the work instead of just managing everything from a distance?" Daniel looked at her directly. "You. Following you that night, seeing what you do at Safe Harbor, having you call me out on my behavior. It woke something up. Made me realize I'd been sleepwalking through my life. I was pretty harsh that day. You were honest. I needed honest." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lena spoke again, her voice quieter. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen without trying to fix it." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Okay. I'm leaving the nanny job." The words hit like a physical blow. "What? Why?" "Let me finish." Lena took a breath. "Safe Harbor is expanding. Angela secured a grant to add a full-time therapeutic program for kids aging out of foster care, and she wants me to run it. It's everything I've been working toward. A chance to do this work professionally, not just as a volunteer. That's incredible, Lena. Congratulations. But it means I can't work here anymore. The hours would conflict, and I need to give this opportunity my full attention." Daniel felt like the ground was shifting under him. "When?" "I'd give you 2 weeks to find someone else. I know that's not much time, but the program starts November 1st, and I don't want someone else. Daniel, I don't mean I won't hire another nanny. I mean I don't want to lose you from our lives, from Jamie's life, from mine." Lena looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You're not losing me. I'll still be around. I can still see Jamie, still be part of his life." "As what? A family friend who visits occasionally? That's not the same." "No, it's not. But Daniel, I need to do this. I've been working toward something like this for years. I can't turn it down because Jamie needs consistency. He'll adjust." "What about what I need?" The question came out more raw than he'd intended. Lena's eyes widened. "What do you need, Daniel?" He could deflect, make it about Jamie, keep his walls up, but he'd spent months learning to be vulnerable, to say the hard, true things instead of the safe, easy ones. "I need you. Not as Jamie's nanny, not as someone I employ. I need you as someone who's become essential to my life. Someone I think about constantly. Someone whose opinion matters more than it probably should. Someone I'm falling for despite my best efforts not to. Lena stood up, and for a terrible moment Daniel thought she was going to leave. Instead, she moved to the window, staring out at the rain. "You can't say things like that," she said quietly. "Why not? It's true. Because I work for you. Because there's a power imbalance. Because I've been afraid to admit my own feelings because I didn't want to jeopardize Jamie's stability." "Your own feelings?" She turned to face him. "I care about you, Daniel. Have for months. But I told myself it was just proximity, just the intimacy that comes from sharing space and caring for someone's child. I convinced myself it wasn't real because it couldn't be real without messing everything up." Daniel stood, crossed the room to stand in front of her. "What if it is real? What if we're both feeling this and we're both too scared to acknowledge it? Then we need to be smart about it, for Jamie's sake." "Agreed. Which is why I think you leaving the nanny position is actually perfect timing." "How is that perfect?" "Because it removes the professional complication. You won't work for me anymore. We'll be equals figuring out what this is between us." Lena shook her head. "It's not that simple. Jamie needs stability. He's already lost his mother. If we try this and it doesn't work out, he loses you and me. That's too much risk. And if we don't try, we lose each other anyway. You take this job, our relationship becomes distant and polite, and Jamie wonders why the people he loves most can't figure out how to be around each other." "You're being reductive." "I'm being honest. Lena, I've spent 2 years protecting myself from loss, from connection, from vulnerability, from anything that could hurt me. And you know what? It didn't work. I was miserable. Jamie was miserable. We were safe, but we weren't living. So you want to risk everything on a relationship that might not work?" "I want to risk everything on a relationship that might be exactly what all three of us need." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "What if I'm not enough? What if you're looking for me to fill the hole Sarah left and I can't do that?" "I'm not asking you to replace Sarah. I'm asking you to be Lena, the woman who taught my son to laugh again, who called me out when I was being an ass, who showed me what it looks like to actually show up for people instead of managing them from a distance. That Lena is more than enough." She wiped at her eyes. "This is terrifying." "I know, but we don't have to rush it. You take the job at Safe Harbor. I find a new nanny for Jamie. We figure out what this is between us without the complication of employment. We take it slow. Jamie will ask questions. Kids always ask questions. We'll answer them honestly. What if it doesn't work? What if it does?" Lena laughed despite her tears. "You're infuriatingly optimistic for someone who was a paranoid mess 3 months ago. I learned from the best." She moved closer, and Daniel could smell her citrus shampoo, could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. "I'm scared, Daniel. Me too. But I'd rather be scared and trying than safe and alone." Lena reached up and touched his face, her palm warm against his cheek. "Okay, we try, but slowly. For Jamie." "For Jamie," Daniel agreed. Then, because he'd learned that sometimes you had to take risks, he leaned down and kissed her. It was soft, tentative, full of promise and fear and hope, all mixed together. When they pulled apart, Lena was smiling. "We're really doing this," she said. "Apparently we are. Jamie's going to lose his mind. Jamie's been trying to set us up for months. He'll be insufferable with satisfaction." They stood there in the quiet living room, holding each other while rain fell outside and the future stretched out uncertain and terrifying and full of possibility. The next morning, they sat Jamie down before school. "We need to talk to you about something," Daniel said. Jamie looked between them with knowing eyes. "You're getting married." "What? No, we're not. We haven't even—" Lena laughed. "Why does everyone jump to marriage?" "Because you guys look at each other weird. Like you want to hold hands, but you're too chicken." "Chicken is not the word I'd use," Daniel said. "But yes, we've been figuring out our feelings for each other." Finally, Jamie rolled his eyes with the dramatic exasperation only a 7-year-old could muster. "I've been waiting forever. It's been 3 months since you first asked about it. That's forever in kid time, so what's happening?" Lena took over. "I'm going to stop being your nanny. I got a new job at Safe Harbor, doing the work I love. Your dad will hire someone else to help take care of you." Jamie's face fell. "You're leaving?" "Not leaving your life, just changing my role in it. I'll still be around. I'm just not going to be working for your dad anymore." "Why not?" Daniel chose his words carefully. "Because Lena and I want to see if we can be more than employer and employee. And that means we need to change our professional relationship." "You want to date?" Jamie stated it as fact. "We want to see if that's something that works for all of us. But it's important to me that you're okay with it. If you're not comfortable..." "Dad, I literally asked you to marry her like 2 months ago. Of course I'm okay with it." "You might feel differently when it's actually happening, and that's okay. Your feelings matter most here." Jamie considered this. "Will the new nanny be as good as Lena?" "Nobody's as good as Lena," Daniel said honestly, "but we'll find someone kind and patient who takes good care of you." "Will Lena still come over?" Lena smiled. "If you want me to, absolutely. I'm not going anywhere, buddy, just changing hats." "Okay," Jamie shrugged. "Can I have pancakes for breakfast?" And just like that, with the resilience of children, he moved on. Daniel and Lena exchanged glances over his head, relief and amusement mixed together. Finding a new nanny proved harder than Daniel expected. After Lena, everyone else seemed wrong, too formal, too chipper, too eager to implement systems and routines that would fix Jamie's grief. Finally, they found Clara, a retired teacher in her 60s who had raised 4 children and knew that sometimes kids just needed steadiness without solutions. "I'm not here to replace anyone," Clara said during her interview. "I'm here to show up every day and make sure this young man has what he needs. That's it." Jamie liked her immediately, especially when she taught him to play chess and didn't let him win just because he was 7. Lena's last day as Jamie's nanny was bittersweet. She made his favorite dinner, chicken tacos with all the toppings, and they ate together, the 3 of them, in the kitchen that had become so familiar. "This isn't goodbye," Lena reminded Jamie. "I'll see you this weekend. We're going to the Science Museum, remember? And Dad's coming too?" "If he wants to." Daniel nodded. "I want to." After Jamie went to bed, Daniel walked Lena to her car. She'd be starting at Safe Harbor on Monday, diving into the work she'd been preparing for. He was proud of her and terrified of what this shift meant for them. "Thank you," he said, "for everything, for saving us, for being patient while I figured out how to be human again. You're giving me too much credit. You did the work. You made me want to do the work. That's the gift." Lena kissed him, soft and sweet. "I'll see you Saturday, 10 o'clock at the museum?" "We'll be there." He watched her drive away, but this time the ache in his chest was different. Not loss, but anticipation. Not fear, but hope. The next few weeks were an adjustment for everyone. Claire settled into the routine with Jamie, who accepted her presence with the cautious optimism of a child who'd learned not to expect permanence. Lena threw herself into her new role at Safe Harbor, developing curricula and support systems for teenagers aging out of foster care. And Daniel continued his Tuesday tutoring, kept showing up in Jamie's life, kept building something that looked like a full existence instead of just survival. He and Lena dated carefully, consciously. Coffee dates while Jamie was at school, dinner at restaurants on the other side of town where they could be just Daniel and Lena instead of Jamie's dad and former nanny. Long phone calls after Jamie was asleep where they talked about everything and nothing. "I feel like a teenager," Daniel confessed one night, "sneaking around, making sure Jamie doesn't see us holding hands, getting butterflies before I see you." "Is that bad?" "No, it's terrifying and wonderful, and I wouldn't change it." A month into this new arrangement, Safe Harbor held another fundraising event, smaller than the gala, more of a community open house to showcase the new programs. Daniel brought Jamie, who was excited to see the place where his dad volunteered and where Lena now worked. Marcus found them immediately. "Jamie, you came!" The 2 boys had formed an unlikely friendship, bonding over video games and shared experiences with loss. They ran off together while Daniel found Lena giving a tour to potential donors. She looked different in this context, confident, passionate, completely in her element as she explained the therapeutic programs and the research behind their approaches. Daniel watched her with pride and something deeper, something that felt like love but was almost too big to name. When the event wound down, the four of them, Daniel, Lena, Jamie, and Marcus, helped clean up. The boys stacked chairs while the adults broke down tables. "This is nice," Marcus said to Jamie, "like family stuff." "Yeah," Jamie agreed. "It's pretty good." Daniel caught Lena's eye across the room. She smiled and he felt something settle in his chest. This was it, this messy, complicated, beautiful thing they were building together. Not replacing what was lost, but creating something new. That night, after dropping Marcus back at his foster home and getting Jamie to bed, Daniel found Lena sitting on his back porch. She'd stayed after saying goodnight to Jamie, and they'd fallen into the habit of these quiet moments together. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said, sitting beside her. "Always." "Do you ever regret it? The way things happened with us? The following, the fighting, all the complicated stuff?" Lena thought about it. "No, because all of that showed me who you really are. Not the polished, successful businessman you present to the world, but the scared father trying to protect his kid. The man who makes mistakes but owns them. The person who's willing to change when change is hard. I was an ass. You were, but you got better. I'm still working on it. We're all works in progress, Daniel. That's kind of the point." He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I love you. I should probably wait to say that, do the whole appropriate timeline thing, but I love you, and I think I have for months." Lena squeezed his hand. "I love you too, even when you're being an ass, especially when you're being brave enough to admit it." "Where do we go from here?" "Forward. Together. Slowly and carefully, and with Jamie's well-being at the center of every decision. But forward." "That sounds perfect." 3 months later, Daniel stood in Safe Harbor's community room watching Lena facilitate a group session with teenagers. She was in her element, drawing out quiet kids, redirecting loud ones, creating space for healing without forcing it. He'd come to drop off some supplies she'd forgotten and found himself captivated by watching her work. Jamie and Marcus were in the tutoring room with another volunteer. Clara had the night off, and Daniel had brought his son to Safe Harbor for the evening. It had become their routine. Tuesdays at Safe Harbor together, followed by dinner at the taco place Jamie loved. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Thanksgiving at my house. You're bringing Lena, yes?" He typed back, "Yes, fair warning, Jamie's been telling everyone we're getting married." "And are you?" Daniel looked at Lena through the window, at the way she listened with her whole body, at her patience and strength and grace. "Eventually, when the timing's right. Don't wait too long. Life's short, and she's remarkable." "I know." After the session ended, they collected Jamie and Marcus and headed to dinner. The boys argued good-naturedly about which video game was superior, while Daniel and Lena shared knowing glances across the table. "This is weird," Jamie announced suddenly. "What is?" Daniel asked. "This. Us. All being together like a real family. It's weird, but good weird. Like when something's different, but you realize different is actually better." Marcus nodded agreement. "Way better than my first 3 foster families. They didn't get tacos." "That's a low bar," Lena said, smiling. "Yeah, but you guys are way above it, like way, way above it." After dropping Marcus home, they drove back to Daniel's house in comfortable silence. Jamie fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the evening. "I'll carry him up," Daniel said. But Lena was already unbuckling Jamie, lifting him with practiced ease. They got him into bed together, a team without needing to coordinate. Daniel pulled off Jamie's shoes while Lena helped him into pajamas. They'd done this dance enough times that it felt natural, effortless. "Stay tonight," Daniel said as they headed downstairs. "Not like that, just stay. Have breakfast with us in the morning. Let's stop pretending you're not already part of this family." Lena smiled. "Okay. But I'm sleeping in the guest room. We're still taking things slow. Frustratingly slow. Good things take time." She was right, of course. They'd built this relationship carefully, with intention and honesty, and Jamie's needs at the forefront. It wasn't the whirlwind romance of movies. It was better, grounded in reality, strengthened by adversity, built on a foundation of actual trust instead of assumptions. The next morning, Jamie came downstairs to find Lena making pancakes while Daniel attempted to help and mostly got in the way. "Lena stayed over," Jamie observed. "Is that okay?" Daniel asked. "Yeah, makes sense. She's basically here all the time anyway." Not all the time. Most of the time. And when she's not here, you're texting her or talking about her, or being all smiley because you're thinking about her. I'm not that obvious. Both Lena and Jamie looked at him with identical expressions of loving skepticism. Okay, maybe I'm that obvious. After breakfast, the three of them went to the park. It was a crisp November morning, the kind where you could see your breath and the light had that particular golden quality. Jamie ran ahead to the playground while Daniel and Lena walked slowly behind. I've been thinking, Lena said, about next steps. Daniel's heart rate picked up. What kind of next steps? I want to meet your mother properly, not as Jamie's nanny, but as your girlfriend. I want to have dinner with your friends. I want to stop compartmentalizing our life together. I want that too. And eventually, when the time is right, I want to talk about what forever looks like for us. Not rushing toward it, but acknowledging that's the direction we're heading. Daniel stopped walking, turned to face her. Forever sounds terrifying and perfect. It does, doesn't it? Lena Carter, you are the most remarkable person I've ever met. You saved my life. You saved Jamie's life. And somehow, impossibly, you're letting me be part of yours. You're part of it because you chose to show up. Because you did the hard work of becoming someone who could meet me as an equal. That's not me saving you. That's you saving yourself. We saved each other. Yeah, I think we did. Jamie ran back to them, breathless and red-cheeked. There's a dog. Can we get a dog? Marcus says dogs are good for families, and we're kind of a family now, so can we? Daniel looked at Lena, who was trying not to laugh. What do you think? Are we ready for a dog? I think, Lena said carefully, that this family could probably handle a dog, if we all agree to take care of it together. All of us? Jamie's eyes were huge. So, Lena's officially part of our family? She's been part of our family for a while, buddy. We're just making it more official. Does that mean you're getting married? Eventually, probably, when everyone's ready. I'm ready now. You don't get a vote on the timing, Daniel said, but your opinion matters in every other way. Jamie hugged them both, fierce and sudden. I like our family. It's weird because it's not like other families, but it's good. Mom would like it too. The mention of Sarah could have been painful, but instead it felt right. She was part of their story, part of what shaped them, and she deserved to be acknowledged. I think she would, Daniel agreed quietly. She'd love Lena, and she'd be proud of how brave you've been. That afternoon, at Daniel's mother's house for an impromptu Sunday dinner, his mother pulled him aside in the kitchen. She's wonderful, she said, nodding toward Lena, who was helping Jamie with a puzzle in the living room. Don't mess this up. I'm trying not to. Try harder. Women like that don't come around often. I know, Mom. Do you? Because I watched you shut down after Sarah died. I watched you build walls so high nobody could reach you, and I worried you'd stay that way forever. Lena broke through the walls. No, she didn't. You chose to take them down. That's different. That's important. His mother squeezed his arm. You're becoming the man I always knew you could be. Your father would be proud. The word surprised him. His father had died 5 years ago, before Sarah, before Jamie, before any of this. Dad was never proud of me. He was. He just didn't know how to show it. But he'd be proud of this, of you being a real father, being vulnerable enough to love again, doing work that matters beyond making money. Daniel thought about the tutoring sessions, the donations, the showing up week after week for kids who needed consistency. I'm trying to be better. You're succeeding. As winter settled in, their life found a rhythm. Daniel and Lena grew closer, moving from carefully scheduled dates to integrated lives. She kept clothes at his house. He had a key to her apartment. They navigated the complicated dance of blending a relationship with parenting, making sure Jamie felt secure even as things changed. On Christmas morning, Daniel gave Lena a key and a question. Move in with us. Officially. Not as Jamie's nanny, not as my girlfriend sneaking into the guest room. As family. Jamie, who'd been in on the plan, bounced with barely contained excitement. Please say yes. I helped Dad pick out your room and everything. Lena looked between them, eyes bright with tears. You picked out my room? Well, it's the master bedroom, Daniel said. I figured we'd share it. But Jamie insisted you need your own space too, so we converted my office into a reading room for you. Completely yours. You gave up your office? I can work from the dining room. You need a place that's just yours. Lena laughed and cried at the same time. Yes, of course, yes. Jamie cheered and launched himself at both of them. And they stood there in the living room full of Christmas lights and wrapping paper, holding each other while the future unfolded bright with possibility. 6 months later, on a warm June evening, Daniel proposed. Not with grand gestures or public displays, but in the backyard with Jamie and Marcus present, because both boys were part of their story. He got down on one knee in front of the woman who'd taught him how to hope again and asked her to make this family official. Lena said yes before he finished the question. They married in August in a small ceremony at Safe Harbor. The kids from the center served as ushers, proud and slightly nervous in their dress clothes. Marcus was Jamie's best man. Angela officiated. And when Daniel kissed his bride in front of family and friends, and the children they'd both committed to serving, he felt something he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Complete. Not because Lena filled the hole Sarah left, but because she'd helped him become someone capable of building a new life without erasing the old one. Someone who could honor the past while embracing the future. Someone who showed up, who took risks, who chose love over fear. At the reception, Jamie gave a toast that was mostly about how he'd known they'd get married from the beginning, and everyone had been too slow to realize it. Marcus added that their family was weird, but the best kind of weird. And when the dancing started, Daniel pulled his new wife close and whispered, "Thank you." For what? For seeing who I could be. For being patient while I got there. For building this with me. Lena smiled against his shoulder. We built it together. That's what matters. Years later, when people asked Daniel about his journey from grieving widower to remarried father to nonprofit board member and advocate for foster care reform, he always came back to the same moment. That night when he'd followed Lena to Safe Harbor, expecting to find evidence of betrayal and instead finding someone who dedicated her life to showing up for others. He'd been looking for reasons to push her away, to confirm that people couldn't be trusted, that isolation was safer than connection. Instead, he'd found someone who challenged him to be better, who refused to accept his walls, who loved him and Jamie enough to demand they actually live instead of just survive. The irony wasn't lost on him. His worst instinct, the surveillance, the suspicion, the inability to trust, had led him to his greatest gift. Not because following her had been right, but because getting caught, being confronted, having to face who he'd become, had forced him to change. Some nights, Daniel still woke up missing Sarah. The grief never fully disappeared, just changed shape, became something he could carry alongside his love for Lena instead of something that consumed him entirely. Both women had shaped him, both loves had meaning, and honoring one didn't diminish the other. Jamie grew up with two mothers in his heart, one who'd given him life and died too soon, one who'd taught him how to hope again. He understood, in the way children raised with honesty do, that families could be complicated and beautiful and strong enough to hold multiple truths at once. And Marcus, who eventually was adopted by Tom and Lisa but never stopped coming around, learned that family wasn't just biology or legal documents. It was people who showed up, who kept showing up, who chose you every day. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Daniel and Lena stood in the backyard of their home, the same house where Daniel had once watched security footage of her leaving, where he'd built walls to keep grief out and accidentally kept life out too. Jamie was 12 now, helping Marcus prepare for high school. Clara still came by occasionally, part of their extended chosen family. "Do you ever think about that night?" Lena asked, reading his thoughts the way she often did. "When you followed me?" "All the time. It was the worst thing I did and somehow the thing that saved me." "Not the worst thing, just the thing that forced you to confront who you'd become. A paranoid mess who couldn't trust anyone. A scared father trying to protect his child the only way he knew how." Lena laced her fingers through his. "You learned better. That's what matters." "I learned from you." "We learned from each other. I learned it was okay to let people in, to build something with someone instead of always going it alone, to trust that not everyone leaves." Daniel pulled her close, breathing in her familiar scent, feeling the solid reality of her in his arms. I love you. I'll never get tired of saying it. Good, because I'll never get tired of hearing it. Inside, they could hear Jamie laughing at something Marcus said, the sounds of family and normalcy and a life built on foundations of trust and honesty and showing up even when it was hard. Daniel had started this journey in fear, built walls to protect himself from more loss, tried to control everything through surveillance and distance. And he'd ended it by tearing down those walls, by choosing vulnerability, by learning that the only way to truly protect the people you love was to be present with them, not to monitor them from afar. He'd learned that real love didn't control or rescue. It showed up. It stayed. It did the hard work of being honest and present and imperfect together. And in learning that, he'd found not just a wife, but a partner. Not just a stepmother for Jamie, but a woman who'd helped them both become whole again. Not just someone to fill the silence, but someone whose presence made the noise of life beautiful. Some stories end in tragedy, some in triumph. This one ended in transformation, a single father learning to let go of fear, a woman who'd survived her own trauma helping others heal, and a child learning that family could be rebuilt from broken pieces into something even stronger than before. They'd started with suspicion and secrets. They'd ended with trust and truth, and a love that had been tested by fire and emerged tempered, resilient, real. And on warm summer evenings, when the family gathered in the backyard and the laughter rose into the twilight, Daniel would sometimes catch Lena's eye and remember the man he'd been, scared and isolated and barely surviving. Remember the moment she'd called him out, refused to accept his walls, demanded he be better. Remember that sometimes the things that break you open are exactly what you need to let the light back in.